so I wasn't directly involved with this. A coworker told me this happened today before we closed. For some important info, I work at a building supply store, as a delivery driver. I'm the only one where I work who is licensed and certified to operate and drive a boom truck. For those who aren't familiar with them, it's a large transport truck with a crane on it for unloading material. So my coworker told me they've been dealing with this customer for several days, who couldn't make up their minds on what material they wanted to redo their roof. Today alone, this customer called 5 times. So about an hour before the store was closing, the customer finally decided what they wanted. The customer said, "I want it delivered tomorrow," and boomed up to my roof. My coworker informed them that they will be unable to deliver tomorrow with a boom because their only driver licensed to operate the vehicle was off tomorrow. I worked 5 days this week, so this is my weekend off. The customer wasn't happy. They were saying, "Well, that's no good. I need this delivered tomorrow." And also said, "I'm sure you can have your driver come in just to do my delivery." My coworker snapped back saying, "No. We aren't gonna ask him to come in for a delivery. It's the driver's weekend off. He's worked the whole week. He's earned his time off." They told the customer the soonest they could get it delivered if they wanted it boomed would be when my weekend off was done. The customer repeated that it was no good. That they need the material tomorrow. My coworker said, "That doesn't sound like chaos emergency. If you need something boomed, we need adequate notice." The customer replied, "Well, I am giving you adequate notice." My coworker explained to the customer that it wasn't adequate notice because they were placing their order within an hour of closing, expecting next day delivery. And pointed out to the customer that if they had decided on the order sooner, that they probably could have gotten it today since I was in. Eventually, the customer backed down. Agreed to have everything delivered tomorrow, but it would only be dropped on the ground, and not taken up to the roof. But then the customer said, "And when I pay with cash, I get a discount, right?" My coworker bluntly told her no. As my coworker was telling me that, I told them they could throw the law at the customer. That I had already worked 5 days, and was near the end of my hours for what I am legally allowed to drive with that truck, just in case this customer decided to make things more difficult in the future. So this just happened to me tonight. I work for one of the many convenience store located across the US. I had this girl come in, probably about 25-30 years old, and ask me to go in the cooler to see if I have any more Hunkins in the tall boy can. Now it's after sundown and I'm working by myself, so I tell her I can't check right now due to safety rules my company has in place. This girl tries to tell me she works in retail too and that I have to go look, like it is a legal requirement or something. I tell her that I will not be going into the cooler and leaving her in my store by herself unsupervised. Big no. This girl actually had the nerve to tell me that she would follow me in. I told her that was not going to happen either. She then demands I call my supervisor. Not happening, not gonna wake them up for this crap. Once this girl figures out I'm not some rube that's just going to listen to her without thinking, she gets mad and shoves a hot sandwich warmer to the floor, causing damage to the equipment before storming out. I just don't understand some people. For those not familiar with convenience store policies and rules, here are some general guidelines. 1. Never go outside after dark. If you must go outside, make sure you stay on camera at all times. 2. Never come out from behind the counter at night if you are working alone. That counter is a barricade and form of protection for you. 3. Never let a customer follow you into an area that is off camera. Walk-in coolers are a common one. This is a good way to get shot in the head or the back. At the end of the day, those of us behind the counter are responsible for our own safety, and we need to take the steps to ensure it. To anyone that wants to say I should have gone and checked for whatever reason you care to mention, the possibility of allowing harm to come to myself is the deciding factor. My life is not worth making a $3 sale, and the cost of replacing a piece of equipment is a price worth paying if it means I get to come home to the wife and child I have waiting on me. About 20 years ago I worked in a mall kiosk. Helped pay the bills while I was in school, and usually had time to read a book during the day. Not a lot of responsibility and a good amount of downtime for minimum wage. There were a bunch of mall regulars and a lot of stories about them. One of my favorites were a couple that the other mall employees lovingly called the Pushers. The Pushers were a pair of adults with developmental disabilities. There was a guy and a girl, probably in their early 20s. They were easy to notice. The guy would be in a wheelchair and the girl would be pushing him around the mall, usually saying hi to all the mall employees. Both nice people, but you could tell they were cognitively atypical. They were very, very childlike. They were in the building like 10 hours a day every day. They'd have breakfast, lunch and dinner in the mall. The home they lived in provided transportation to and from, and while I didn't see them buying a lot, you'd always see them together, socializing with everyone in the mall. Often when they'd stop by me, the guy in the chair would ask me to check his watch, to make sure it was the right time. He knew that the clocks went backwards and forwards at different times of year, but didn't seem to understand when. So, pretty much every day I'd work, I'd check it for him, let him know, yup, you're still on time. And they'd both laugh, and she'd push him over to the next store. And I thought it was just the most heartwarming thing. Here's this couple that found each other. A lid for every pot type couple. The guy couldn't walk and the girl was by his side helping him get around. They had companionship, were supportive of each other and a kind of purpose together. And not in an oh how inspiring demeaning type of way, but genuinely made you think the world could be okay. No matter how bad things got, you could always find someone to be with. I wasn't sure if they were in love, but I really hoped it was. One day they came by and I noticed that the girl was now in the wheelchair and the guy was pushing her around. It took a second to register, but I checked his watch, let him know he was on time. They laughed and moved along. I had to have been slack-jawed. Shortly after I ran over to the mall security guard, next booth over, and asked him if he just saw that. He said, "What, the Pushers? He can walk. She makes him take turns with her every couple of days. You didn't know that? That's not even their wheelchair, it belongs to the mall. They take it every day. They've tried to steal it a few times and take it back to the home, but their occupational therapist brought it back. She said he's being lazy." Shortly after that, there was about a week straight where I didn't see them. Really unusual for them. So I again asked the security guard and he told me, "Oh, they're banned for 2 weeks. If you see them, call me." I asked if it was because they tried to steal the wheelchair again. He said nope, they were caught doing something in the bathroom that you shouldn't do in public. Thankfully, he did not elaborate. Never could look at them the same after that. TLDR, customer steals ravioli, comes back a few days later and threatens me. I work at a gas station and the other day I had a man come and grab a whole bunch of vapes before we are allowed to sell alcohol. Where I live we have a law that doesn't allow us to sell between a certain time, so I told him, "Hey man, you too early for that. If you wait 5 to 10 minutes we can get you set up with that." I had other things to do, so I left my coworker up front and I walked into the back. One of our managers was in the back and I jokingly said, "This man must really want his booze," and she said, "Oh, I was going to ask you about him, he was just standing there looking a little weird." Then I looked at the camera as she pointed at him and I saw him put something in his pocket. I thought it was booze. I told her, "Hey, watch the cameras, I think he took something." So she goes back to review the footage. As I'm walking up there to talk to him, he's walking out, so I go out to take a smoke break and I see him in his car eating something and I come back and say it was not alcohol, it was a can of food, and she confirms he had stolen it. He comes back in to pay for his booze and my manager says, "Hey, make sure he pays for that," and so I go back up, I say, "Hey, we saw you steal something on the video, I'm going to need you to pay for that." He ignores me and continues the transaction for his booze. I walk around, grab the can of ravioli, scanned it after his transaction. He proceeds to say, "Oh, we're good, right?" And I say, "No, can you pay for this real quick?" He does. Then he proceeds to say, "F you and your ravioli," and leaves the store. While he's driving off he throws the can of ravioli at the door and it splatters everywhere, making a giant mess that I have to clean up. Flash forward a couple days later, I'm working, he comes back and I say, "Hey man, after the other day's situation you're not allowed here anymore." To which he responds, "Well, F you," and I tell him, "Hey man, you can just leave," and he says, "Or I could just punch you in your F face, you have a very punchable nose," and I said, "You can just F leave man, you can F go before I call the cops." Then he continues to spout stuff about wanting to kick my ass, he could just punch me right now, I'm a F idiot. Then I responded, "Hey, I've dealt with harder people from a different location that I worked at." He says in response, "F you and that location you worked." and then leaves. Now I've had cops contacting me and we're working on getting him trespassed from the store. Welcome to /r/Tales from Retail's Express Lane, your quick stop for short tales, pithy observations and general retail chat about how things are going with your store, your customers and yourselves. Any experiences with pandemic-related topics, mask issues, anti-vaxxer encounters, etc., should also be posted here and not as a standalone tale. Please, follow the rules /r/Tales from Retail/wiki/ regarding anonymity and derogatory speech. No business names. All comments will be sorted by new.